too. Pretty sure he would have a hard time making it to this top 8 with that kind of record. But we saw Jacob Baugh actually play his win-in matchup against an Oldham, defeating Joe Cologne to punch his ticket to this top 8. Looked very comfortable, very practiced. You could tell from the absolute onset of the game, Jacob knew exactly what he was trying to do.
Yeah, this is back-to-back top 8s for Jacob as well.
Absolutely,
in national championships. So definitely a force to be reckoned with
Calling
here.
top 8 competitor as well. You know, Jacob continues to put up really big results. And again, the story of this weekend, looking for the marquee finish, looking to take that trophy home and really stamp his name on the American flesh and blood scene.
So it does look like we're going to be kicking off with Easton here. He's going to go ahead and tick up that tunic, and let's see what he's got for us turn 1.
Yeah, and we always like to start with a equipment check. Things looking pretty standard on both sides of the field thus far.
That field on Jacob's side, though, it's going to start getting cluttered really soon.
It will. I say standard, too. I do want to note that we saw several of the Oldhams go ahead and use Heart of Ice in this matchup. Not available to Easton Douglas, so this isn't a preference thing. This is just the chess piece he has. But it could make a difference in terms of how well they were able to disrupt Jacob's attempt to go ahead and use those defense reactions. But a really nice start here from Easton as we're going to go ahead and kick things off with a Terra Sunder into a Winter's Wail. Possibly able to get some equipment here from Jacob to start things off. Or, you know, if you're Jacob, you just say, maybe this is the one instance I just let a little damage flow through. I discard a couple cards. No big deal. And actually,
he's going to block for 3 here.
Even better than that, Tan. You're not even discarding the cards. You're putting them on the bottom of the deck, which is exactly what Jacob wants to be doing. A discard could be a bit of a threat. Maybe you lose something like a Plasma Purifier. But going to the bottom of the deck, I think Jacob will be just fine with that.
Yeah, and even at the bottom of the deck, he could still find it a lot sooner as well. You know, he's got search effects and stuff for the game.
Absolutely, yeah. Has Spark to go ahead and do a little searching should he need to. Spark of Genius. So this damage is just going to come through. Frostbite headed Jacob's way.
Yeah, a little question for the judge here. It looks like there was a block from a Command and Conquer from Jacob. One of the few actual attack actions in Jacob's deck. He's got a few, but nowhere near as many as you're used to seeing in a Dash deck.
Yeah, and one of them is Feindal's Fighting Spirit, which is often committed to defense, gaining a little bit of extra life. Does have 6 copies of that, but yeah, it's the Mechanologist stuff that's really missing, and we don't see a lot of, not many Mechanologist attacks in Jacob's deck.
Really nice play here for Jacob Baugh, too. Going to let that Frostbite resolve, and then with the Frostbite in play, he's going to go ahead and play a Sigil of Suffering, paying the 1 to get rid of the Frostbite, so it's not there.
Yeah, and Jacob comes out ahead on this turn. 41 life for Jacob Baugh. So, yeah, Sigil of Solace was the one paid there, not Sigil of Suffering. Sorry about that. But, yeah, a very clean exchange for Jacob, able to come out +1 life after the first turn.
Yeah, this is something that Jacob's deck's going to do a lot during the games. Most of his turns are going to be not attacking.
Yep.
And if he does, it's going to be something like he's going to shoot the pistol at you. You're going to hear pew-pew a lot in this game. A lot of what he's trying to do here is set up a robust in-game of just attacking for 15 every turn with the pistol 5 over 3 times. He's going to gain some life through this game. He's going to turn through his deck. He's going to find some items, and he's going to have a ton of defense reactions. And one of the ways in which he does this is he's going to try to run Easton out of red attacks.
Yep.
He's going to continuously just stymie that offense as much as he possibly can. So Easton's deck is just a bunch of the blue cards that are not as threatening.
Jacob's like a sponge in the early game, just absorbs attack after attack after attack, says bring it, throws defense reactions in the way, and isn't going to be much in the way of offense. I think this is usually the extent of it. Maybe 1 pistol activation, sometimes 2. That's a possibility as well. But the deck really hums once it finds all of its items. So we're looking for the setup of 3 Plasma Purifiers, a couple of Induction Chambers, and that Teklo Plasma Pistol, and then we'll start getting real dangerous attacks going large and wide for Jacob.
So it looks like we're going to have a Crown activation here plus a block from the Ram's Head.
Yeah, we did mention yesterday how Rampart of the Ram's Head, when it was first appearing on the scene, kind of heralded as the dash killer, able to go ahead and block multiple times should the combat chain be closed, as dash often will do. But Jacob just goes bigger than that. He says you can use your Rampart to block for 6 a turn. I don't care. I am doing you 15 and using none of the cards in my deck to do it. What are you going to do about that?
By the way, thanks, Jacob, for making us look bad here. We talked about how little he's going to attack, and the first turn here is attacking twice.
Yeah, firing off Command and Conquer.
Looks like a block for 3 here. Easton, so a little bit of damage going to get through for
damage.
Jacob.
Importantly, takes a card from Easton's hand, a red attack. I mean, that matters. The more of those red attacks that are committed to non-attacking, the better off Jacob is.
So Jacob's excited about getting blocked by reds.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
A good first couple turns for Jacob.
Not something you think about too often in this game, but they're just Command & Conquers everywhere.
Yeah, and Command & Conquer, one of the cards that really feels tailor-made for this matchup on Easton Douglas's side. Not only disrupting that arsenal, which Jacob is pretty keen to set up, but also can't really be affected by defense reactions. And oftentimes, Jacob will not have that many blocks in hand because so much of the deck is defense reactions, is things like potentially Remembrance, Sigil of Solace, both played on this turn.
Thanks.
Which do not do a great job blocking that Command & Conquer. But Jacob did have the effective blocks there, and it's just going to gain a ton of life. And if I'm Jacob, I am so pleased with how these early turns have gone. Sitting on 44 life, just going ahead, churning through deck, finding the various pieces. Everything going according to plan thus far.
Yeah, Jacob's not really worried about his opponent's life total until the very end of the game.
Absolutely.
Here we go. We're going to Rouse the Ancients from Easton, revealing 2 cards from hand. So this is going to be attacking for 7.
Yeah, Rouse the Ancients.
It's going to have Go again as well. This turn is not even over after this.
A lot of hoops to jump through, but a very efficient attack is Rouse the Ancients once you've fulfilled its conditions.
Finding Go again attacks when you're a Guardian,
tough.
They're few and far between.
It's
so
tough.
you deal with what you got.
Yeah, one of the big takeaways from this weekend is just a return of some really classic flesh and blood cards mixed into all these new heroes that we're seeing have such a dramatic impact on this metagame. Of course, Fi and Icelander appearing in our top 8. We're doing it with some of our old classics in Flesh and Blood. Things like Wounded Bull, things like Last Ditch Effort, Sigil of Solace. These
I
are
love
what
that you're
at.
putting Wounded Bull in the classic territory,
Well,
because I don't know if it was ever even played.
It's from Welcome to Wrath.
Sure.
We'll say that.
Sure.
So anything that comes from Welcome to Wrath, I'm very excited about
Same,
seeing
yeah.
down in the future match area. And Rouse the Ancients, I'd also put in that category as kind of like one of those OG Flesh and Blood cards. Very, very impactful in the early days of the game.
All right, so we've got a block and a sink blow here from Jacob. Here comes the second attack.
Look at this turn from the
zealous.
Oldhim, going super wide and getting now 2 attacks in, possibly a third to follow it up.
Zell's belting coming in for 5, and I think Jacob just went ahead and took this, and then that's another go against. This is the third attack. Achievement unlocked. Attack 3 times as
Guardian.
Oldhim.
Yeah, 16 power worth of attacks on that turn.
Jacob
from
down to
Easton.
35 as well.
It's very funny to see 16 power worth of attacks, and Jacob's just like, oh, I guess I'll go to 35.
Usually when a Guardian attacks for 16, it's one giant attack.
That as well, yeah. And here's the first part of that engine for Jacob. It's our first Plasma Purifier coming down. Of course, these are going to go ahead and power up those pistols throughout the turn for Jacob Baugh.
No knickknacks in sight. No way to kill any items.
Arg Smash.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, no Brutes out there. Could see more Brutes. We talked about Brute having a bunch of polarizing matchups, doing well into Dromai, into Oldhim. Should this dash deck take off, maybe it's time to bust out the Arg Smash.
Maybe we should just nickname this dash deck the Glass House.
I see it. I see it for sure.
All right, we got an attack for 8 here from Easton. Got through quite a bit of damage last turn. Let's see how much Jacob wants to stop this turn. Got a block for 3 here. Looks like we're going to move to defensive reactions.
Yeah, Fate Foreseen, soaking up 4 more of that damage. Only 1 coming through. Jacob going to be pretty unimpressed by that.
We're going to have an Arsenal and a pass from Easton. Back up over to Jacob.
And you see how frustrating it is on Easton's side. You just want to make some progress, do something to threaten Jacob, and it's so hard to get there.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and charge up some of these items, use some of these items. Here comes the pistol.
And that pistol is going to be pumped in this instance.
Attacking for 3 here.
Also, credit where credit's due. Jacob, very good at putting dice on things.
Also playing very quickly. I can appreciate everything Jacob does. He was joking with me about this earlier. He's like, yeah, you have to play really fast if you play this deck because he only gets about 10 minutes of the clock. His opponent gets about 40.
Yeah.
So he's like, I have to play as quickly as possible. If you can't play this deck, this is a warning for everybody at home. He's like, if you can't play this deck quickly, don't play this deck.
I think those are sound words of advice from Jacob. You need to know this deck inside and out. You need to move quickly. Otherwise, you will have problems with the clock. Of course, untimed here in this top 8. But Jacob's still showing that quick pace of play we saw throughout the entire weekend.
Very proficient at card games. Jacob's been around the block a time or 2.
Absolutely.
No stranger to these situations, playing for large amounts of glory plus dollars.
Yeah, Jacob with some big wins in the past. Very famous wins. Under the banner of Star City as well. Happy to be back playing under our bright lights.
It's always nice to go back home.
Absolutely. See a 5-card hand here for Easton. Able to use that infamous Crown of Seeds Feyendel Spring Tunic setup. Just deciding on defensive options here.
Yeah. We've got one block kind of floating here from this Crown of Seeds, so he wants to see, what's my turn look like? Can I afford to give away a card here? Because we do see a pummel.
Yeah,
and that's
see a
pretty
pummel,
good.
Zealous Belting, so some options here. Easton says, how many of these cards am I actually going to use? What is my output on the next turn? Can I afford to give one towards preventing all of this Teklo Plasma Pistol damage? And it's an interesting decision whether to block. I think 9 times out of 10, you're just happy to take damage if you're in Easton's seat because you kind of just have to kill Jacob before he sets up his combo. If you don't, whatever you do doesn't matter. But in this case, is going to go ahead and deploy that Spinal Crush towards defense.
Go ahead.
Preserve the life total.
He's going to go ahead and give the pistol go again here. Load back up here. Attack for 3 again.
Yeah, another 3 attack. Still has that shield floating, by the way, from Crown of Seeds.
Jacob loving seeing these reds coming out. It's a red Spinal Crush blocking, and that's just another big attack that he doesn't have to deal with as this game goes on.
Yeah, when you think about how it breaks down by raw numbers, Jacob needs his defense numbers in the deck to be higher than Easton's offensive numbers if he plans to block everything out. And ultimately, Easton does have the edge in that spot, but it's all about where you leak damage, how efficient you are you able to gain life? And anytime a red is being deployed towards something else, you're pretty happy about it. That pummel, though, going to head back into the deck, just used to pump up the ram part of the ram's head here.
And 1 is going to leak over here as well.
Back to Easton's turn. Going to go ahead and tick up that Tunic.
Rouse is going to go back into the deck here, getting pitched for resources, and it looks like you're just going to have a Winter's Wail for 4. So after those couple blocks, a little bit less exciting turn than could have been for Easton, but keeping that life total high. Maybe hoping for later in the game when the Plasma Purifiers are bigger numbers, he can absorb a few of them and not having to give up cards there and still fight back.
Yeah, that's an interesting line to take for sure. Just want to point out some options for extending this game a little bit. I do see things like a So Tomorrow in Easton's deck, so going to try and maybe get a little extra utility out of those cards, play a little bit longer game.
All right, here we go, charging everything up for Jacob. Going to make this Plasma Pistol just that much better. Pump it up. Pump up the jams.
Tannen being old, as usual. No one has pumped up the jams in a very long time, Tannen.
Jacob's pumping up the jams as we speak, Brian.
I'm older than you. Why do I have to babysit you for your oldness, Tannen? I am older than you. You should be the one putting me to bed, making sure I've had my oatmeal. Instead, I have to constantly make sure you're not drifting into old man territory.
Warm glass of milk.
Right.
Again, we see the Plasma Pistol coming in for an attack for 3 here. Looking to even up these life totals. 33 to Jacob, 36 to Easton. Brian, I'm trying not to think about the old thing. You know, you talked about existential dread earlier in the tournament. We have that creeping up on us. I don't really want to think about it anymore.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. You can think about Flesh and Blood instead. Because we're going to have some time to think about it.
I am still thinking about chocolate chip cookies, though. I will
Yeah,
say that.
yeah, I know. Me too.
I'm going to have to go get some. I think there's an Insomnia cookie somewhere around
There
us.
is. Yeah, we might have to make a run between rounds.
Dude, they deliver.
Oh, okay. They might have to make a run between rounds. Going to go ahead and use this ram part of the ram's head. This time pitching an Oakenold, so that's going to cycle back through the deck, and I think that's important. That's the one you have to preserve. You have to make sure you have access to those Oakenolds, and you have to find a spot to catch Jacob with it. So maybe a little bit of gamesmanship on both sides here, maybe saving things like Oakenold until the deck has been filtered through a little bit, and some of those premium defense reactions have been burned through on the part of Jacob.
Absolutely. See the Ram's Head come out and block here, too. I think those Oakenholds are super important, like you said. I think they almost have to be fused. You have to try to find a way to fuse them as much as possible
100%.
to force through damage, because Jacob's still at 33 here. All right, here's a start to a turn. We got a Zell's Belting. Sorry, Rabble Rousing.
No, you're good.
Zell's Belting.
Zell's Belting.
Sorry, I got a little bit of glare on this one. Missing this one just a little bit.
Yeah, and that is going to go ahead and get go again due to those attacks in the bin.
We do have 2 floating here, very ominous number anytime you're playing against Oldham.
Another Oakenold headed to the bottom of the deck. So now we're looking at a spot where we've got a couple Oakenolds in a row. We have our Earth card. Want to get an Ice card into the pitch zone next. Make sure we have that very nice pitch stack set up.
So it looks like this is going to be the pummel, and this is going to be met with an unmovable.
Yeah, classic attack reaction into defense reaction. Again, something feeling very old school Flesh and Blood.
I was like, that just feels like Flesh and Blood to me
Absolutely.
when I see that happen.
Absolutely.
When you see the attack reaction get met by a defense reaction, just, oh, I love it. So pure.
Yeah, I want to keep note of how carefully Easton Douglas managing the pitch stack here. If you see an Ice card as the pitch here, maybe just a Winter's Whale attack, it tells you Easton knows, has to set up very important Oakenolds. You don't have to do it on this cycle. You could certainly do it on the third cycle, which we'll probably get to in this matchup, but is something to be very aware of.
Yeah, Jacob adding another item to his ever-growing little workshop he's got going on over here.
Second Plasma Purifier, keep piling up these items.
Looks like the Tunic's going to get cashed in.
Yeah.
Get 2 cards. This is going to be a big attack. This is a Macho Grande.
And you are going to see both Ice card and Earth card. So now we've got a couple of Oakenolds, all of the elements we need to maybe get in some real fusion shenanigans when we get to that stage of the game. So now we need to see if Jacob recognizes what's happening on the pitch stacking side of Easton, starts preparing by pitching some of these defense reactions. It's all about lining up your deck with your opponents and understanding what they have coming in the future.
Let's see, it doesn't look like that's going to be one, but...
Well, we're going to shuffle anyway. We do have Spark of Genius, so tougher to play the pitch stacking game over on Jacob's side.
He went ahead and took that damage down to 25. Let's see what he's going to get. All right, now he's got the fabled 3 of a kind.
Yep, so we're looking at 2 attacks, 4/5 per turn. Things are starting to get dangerous. Very quickly assembled those Plasma Purifiers, by the way, did Jacob Baugh. Life total still comfortable. Easton Douglas pitching towards the late game. Going to be a while till we see those 2 Oakenolds come back around.
You got to be a little uneasy in your seat, though, if you're Easton. Even at 32, you know what's coming.
I agree. Easton knows there's a clock.
We joke about this from the Oldham side. When you're against Oldham, you hear the footsteps. He could hear the gears grinding.
Oh, very nice. Very nice transition there, Tannen. Got to say, I love this Arcanite Skullcap on the part of Jacob. His deck is so single-minded in its focus. We've seen Arcanite Skullcap fall out of favor, of course, for Crown. But this, ultimately, if you manage your life total well, will block for 3. Crown blocks for 2. And that little small difference in numbers matters a ton to Jacob. You have to prevent every ounce of damage you possibly can.
And speaking of fusion, we have a fused Endless Winter here as well. Something that could come up and be very relevant.
A lot of words on old Endless Winter.
Yeah, this one they had to use the smaller text on this card.
My read on Endless Winter is it tends to do everything or tends to do nothing.
I can kind of agree with that.
Sort of reminds me of what we call a Punisher effect in our TCGs, where the opponent kind of gets to dictate how this card is going to be applied. Looks like it's time for a Crown activation on our own turn for Easton, just using that card to go ahead and do a little filtering. Another bonus effect of Crown of Seeds for sure. Card just does everything.
Ice card going to the bottom of the deck there as well, kind of making sure it stays around those Oakenolds that we saw with some of those Earth cards. Maybe set up a little bit later to be able to maybe put one in Arsenal, draw your next hand, and be able to fuse it.
Sure. And Jacob just says, yeah, I'm just going to draw here, which is about what I expected after lining up a big block on that Endless Winter. That's how that card generally plays out. It gets your whole hand, then gives you a bunch of Frostbites, but you don't care because you gave it your whole hand anyway. So still high threat from the Oldham side, no doubt.
Yeah, Jacob really good at shrugging off Frostbites as well here. He's like, yeah, I just won't do anything. That's fine.
That's fine.
Just let it go.
I
wasn't going to do much anyway. Little underrated play here. I think I love seeing this from Easton and these aggressive on his own turn Crown of Seeds, sculpting that hand.
Yeah, maybe trying to find a way to keep the disruption train rolling against Jacob. I see some glacial footsteps floating around the hand.
Making sure that he can fuse this as well when he plays it. So important. Dominate so important in this matchup. Looks like Rouse the Ancient's going to reveal. Is that a Mulch?
It is a Mulch.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
3 copies of Mulch, blue Mulch in Easton Douglas's deck.
I call this my Brian Gottlieb card. You have a card or two in every set that you're like, I like this one a lot. I think it's going to show up in some decks, and then it just like kind of never does.
Yep.
This is my Brian Gottlieb card of the set. I was pretty big on Mulch when it came out.
Yeah, I think fairly so. It's a powerful effect. Reminds you a little bit of Command and Conquer.
I think if it would have been an Earth card, it would have just been a snap play in a bunch of the decks.
Oh, absolutely. So again, 2 attacks on this turn for Easton. Going to go ahead and come in with the Winner's Wail. Looks like that was just met cleanly by a Sink Below. Jacob protecting that life total. Again, very content to just spend the turn putting counters on things. That's what he does.
And we've seen this matchup a few times. We've seen Jacob Baugh willing to go down to pretty low life totals. We've seen him get down to almost single digits, like low teens.
Yeah, well, he does a great job of rebounding, as we see here, this Heart of Fyendel coming down to gain a life.
Yeah, he does have some ways to gain life, but also he's just trying to position himself to that spot where, we're starting to see this, where he's going to be able to attack 2, maybe 3 times a turn with a 5-power pistol. And when that happens, that's better than a good defense, because now if you don't block, you're going to die. So now they're getting cards out of their hands, so now he doesn't even have to block at that point as much.
Absolutely. Would love to get that second induction chamber into the mix here. The last missing piece of the quote-unquote combo.
And here we go.
Yeah, 3 pumps to this trio of plasma purifiers. That means our Teklo plasma pistol going to go ahead and attack for 5 on this turn. It's going to do it 2 times as well, thanks to that induction chamber.
Again, if you want to play this deck from Jacob Baugh, which I highly recommend, great deck. A, you need to get some practice in. B, get your counters ready. Lots of moving parts, lots of counters.
You have a system. Know how you're going to manage your things. Know how you're progressing through your turns.
It'll help you play a little bit quicker.
Mechanics will help a lot. I want to point out on Jacob's side, all that equipment, untouched. Skull Cap still ready to block 3. Tekla Foundry Heart ready to block 3. Both those 2 pieces of Ironhide ready to block 2. That's a lot of block value tied up in equipment.
Still has the full fridge.
Do you know what that means, Tannen? Do you know where the term fridge comes from?
I know it in reference to Flesh and Blood. I don't know where it came from, though.
Yeah, it references the initial sharks of Flesh and Blood that would show up with their entire cold foil legendary set of equipment ready to block 2 all over the place. So because it was cold foil, it became known as the fridge.
Oh, good to know. I'm actually better knowing that now. I appreciate that. Today I learned.
That's what I'm here for, Tannen. This controversial cookie takes.
Existential Dread.
Existential Dread. These are all my checklist items.
This is Brian in a nutshell.
Zealous Belting coming in. 5, go again.
Easton doing a very good job this game of presenting wide turns of multiple
I
2,
agree.
3 attacks.
They are wide turns. They're not doing a lot of damage.
Correct.
That's the problem I have with them. And look, I don't know what the answer is for Easton. I think it's Oak and Old, and I respect the idea that you can pitch stack them and you want to play towards your second cycle and just go off in a fury of Oak and Olds. But part of me is concerned that if you just don't do it early enough, you're not going to be able to, because your life total is going to be under too much threat. You're not going to be able to keep enough cards in hand to actually successfully do that.
Yeah, we're seeing that start to manifest now as Jacob sets up a block for 5 here. That, yeah, Jacob, again, like you said, still has a ton of extra. His life total is way higher than 25 here, right?
Yes.
And now he started to almost get the full combo going of being able to attack the Plasma Purifier multiple times a turn for 5. And that's when it starts to get really scary. Easton's only at 22. He can only shrug off so many attacks from the pistol.
Yeah, only an induction chamber short of the full combo. As usual, great block here from Jacob, lining up the Sink Below. No damage coming through from the Winter's Wail.
And you got to love how good Sink Below and all the other ones, the ones that like opt and stuff as well in this deck, all of his defensive reactions either keep him alive or filter him to find those combo pieces. Very well put together.
The opt on Fate Foreseen is a big deal. You're always moving towards a new goal. Easton is going to find a way to maybe push a little bit damage here. Tries for the pummel, but Jacob, as usual, at the ready, had another defense reaction, springboard somersault.
Acrobatically with a somersault out of the arsenal.
Just flips out of the way.
I try to get a little more alliteration going there. We've been talking about that all weekend.
Springboard somersault, not a card I thought I'd see this weekend. I mean, a fine card. I'm not hating on it at all. Yellow, potential block 4. That's great, and it plays exactly into what Jacob wants to do. It's just been a long time.
It's just sync number 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
Once we see the syncs and the Fate Foreseens, just more zeros for 2 or 4. Plays really well against Pummel.
It does. I mean, you can't state enough how much Jacob's deck was built to prey on this matchup. If you're saying, like, wow, Jacob's cards line up really well against what this Oldhim is doing, that's not an accident. They're chosen exactly for that purpose.
And here's a decent break point as well. Here's an attack for 9 from a Spinal Crush from Easton. Let's see if Jacob's... These are the attacks that generally can get a point or two through in the matchups that we see. And sometimes these leak a little bit. We'll see how much Jacob has. So there's another Somersault. This is going to block 4 plus 3, so I think it's 7. So it looks like 2's going to go through.
Yeah, a little bit of damage coming through. Of course, that crush effect not going to be active. Has to deal 4 or more to shut off go again. So Jacob going to be happy about that.
Down to 23. And yeah, I don't think this is an attack where you want to be using your equipment either to block from here, right?
No, I agree. You want to hit critical on hit. Ideally, you're saving them for Oaken Olds.
Which you know are coming around.
Yeah.
So you've seen the... Jacob's the kind of guy that's watching the pitch stack from his opponent as well.
100%.
We've got a Sift getting pitched here to load up this pistol.
Yeah, and the combo is mostly online here. We're looking at 2 attacks, 4-5 from this Teklo Plasma pistol.
All right, here's the first one. Easton going to go ahead and start the whole chain here. Looks like we're going to have a Crown of Seeds activation. Got to believe a Ram's Head's going to get activated behind this. Chain's going to get broken from here, so you're going to see the Ram's Head really do some heavy lifting here in the next few turns.
Yeah, and it is so hilarious to me that that is the obvious outcome. Jacob knows this is going to happen and also knows it's not good enough to actually stop what he wants to do.
It taxes Easton so much to be able to do this every turn. He has to have cards left over for this every time. You know, Absolutely. He needs at least a blue every turn to be able to keep up with this, and then it doesn't even stop all the damage.
No, when the full combo is assembled, you can have a blue, but you're still going to go ahead and leak 9 damage beyond what is represented by the Rampart, and now you're talking your full hand. You're just not going to come out of that turn with any grip once you're at a very, very low life total.
Yeah, you see the +2 there on the shield because it's the second time this turn it's blocked and been activated, so it is going to block 2 there, but 3 more is going to get through. Easton down to 16. Jacob at 23. Very comfortable 23 for Jacob here because this is like a virtual 30.
Yeah, and now it's time for what looks like a red Glacial Footstep. So a big attack here, no fusion, Tannen, and, you know, this is going to be an interesting decision point in this matchup. How often can you afford to just make large attacks with no fusion, with no dominate? And it's weird because I see wanting to go ahead and make sure you're always dominating. At the same time, Jacob's deck very good at answering dominate. Incredibly good. It has all these unmovables, these sink belows from Arsenal, many, many ways to play around the effect of dominate. So I get the tension for Easton, where you can't just lay back and do nothing but make sure you always dominate these things, because Jacob might just have the answer anyway.
And this is a perfect example of it right here, right? His deck is very good at blocking with 1 card from hand, 1 card from Arsenal, that being a defensive reaction, and this is the bottom of the barrel for it, right? This is 7.
Yeah.
With 1 card from hand and a card from Arsenal. And most of the time it's going to be for even more. You know, he's got these big ones like unmovables. Uh-oh.
Also, I'll note, I don't know that I've ever seen Jacob Arsenal anything besides a defense reaction.
Right.
I honestly don't think anything else has ever been there. So when you're dominating these things, you know there's going to be 2 blocks available. It doesn't even matter. What does matter is that second induction chamber. And now we're looking at the full combo.
We've got the Infinity Gauntlet.
This is the suite that Jacob was trying to put together. There's only 2 copies of induction chamber in the deck. This is maximum damage output for Jacob. Now, when he has the resources available, we'll look to present 15 a turn.
Yeah, he's going to be able to snap his fingers every turn and just attack for 5 over and over and over again here.
Scary spot if you're Easton Douglas. The clock very much ticking.
Yeah, it's a very fast clock at this point.
And
now.
It feels like Jacob still has so many options, so many ways to go ahead and play through. And looks like Jacob going to take a little read here.
I think this is an unkicked Endless Winter.
I think you're correct. So Jacob just
unfused,
verifying which of the effects is still going to go ahead and apply in the unfused state. Yeah, Frostbites, whenever you activate an ability, if it hits, even when it's unfused.
Yeah, so the second ability, the last sentence of the giant paragraph there, is going to be the one that's still relevant here.
That's a really strong effect against Jacob, by the way. That means anytime he tries to do any of these shenanigans with all these items, they will be shut down by Endless Winter. And I think that's why you see Jacob reaching for some equipment here. Is he able to find a full block of this Endless Winter and still put together a decent turn on the return?
So far, we're right at about 4 when he blocks this card from hand. So I got to believe maybe there's a Fate Foreseen and something along those lines behind this as well.
It makes sense, for sure. Like I said, I mean, maybe just always expect there to be a defense reaction in Jacob's arsenal.
Maybe a little bit of a rethink here. I mean, there is the thing where if Jacob just wants to block a little bit of this, take the damage, he could just take a turn off of attacking as well. It's not the end of the world for him to have to do that, but it would be a decent win for Easton.
Yeah, anytime Easton prevents Jacob from executing the combo, I think he's pretty happy.
And Easton's got to feel good about this turn. He's making Jacob actually second-guess himself. This is the first time
for
this
the first time, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Jacob has played with lightning speed. Very easy decisions thus far for Jacob. And now a little bit in the grinder, figuring out the best way to get out from under the oppression of this endless winter. Oldham must be from my neck of the woods, New York, upstate New York, where
I don't know how y'all do it. I really don't.
Is in fact endless.
I've never lived anywhere where it snows. Can't possibly deal with it.
Man, I'm going to New Zealand this winter. I'm not even messing with New York. Done with it.
Can I tag along? Can I be your carry-on?
Yeah.
Sweet. I think I could fit in the overhead department.
Always room for a tannin in my suitcase.
You hear that, LSS? I'm coming.
Skull cap going to be used.
Yeah, tons of equipment getting used here for Jacob. So
yeah, so Jacob really prioritizing preserving, executing the combo on this turn, and I would expect nothing else but loading all these items up with our various counters and getting some pew-pew. I think what Jacob was debating was whether to use that expected, I won't say certainly, defense reaction chilling out in Arsenal, or whether he wanted to use some equipment here, and instead prioritizing using the equipment. I think a lot of that has to do with how much damage is presented by the Endless Winter. Endless Winter presenting 8 as opposed to the 9 of Oakenold, so Jacob may be thinking the defense reaction a little bit better at accounting for that.
He also knows they're coming soon. We're about to start hitting that second cycle from earlier in the game. So definitely something to be thinking about. It's a really good point there, Brian, that you could see him getting kind of, he was maybe not second guessing himself, but just trying to figure out all the permutations, like what's the best way to block here? Is this worth my equipment?
It was about finding the optimal line. I think Jacob had many good options on that turn. I don't know that he was ever under fear from that Endless Winter, but he needed to find what is the best way for me to deal with. Because efficiency matters in this matchup. Everything Jacob does has to be efficient. That's the name of the game for these Dash players.
If you could be anything, why wouldn't you be efficient?
It's a good choice. And I love how that kind of fits with the mechanologist ethos, you know, making all these items to do your work for you and just making sure everything is working as smoothly as possible.
So one's going to get through here. Jacob's going to give the pistol go again. So attack for 5 again. So the chain has been broken. Ram's Head can come back out here. I think Easton's going to leave it up there because he's like, yeah, this is just going to happen over and over again. So now this is going to be blocking for the full 5.
Yeah, is going to put another resource into it.
Give it go again. Now make it attack.
And again, you see how effective this Ram part of the Ram's Head is, but still damage leaks through and a bunch of cards from Easton's hand. So even with this hard, quote-unquote, hard counter to Techloplasma Pistol, still a bunch of damage coming through for Jacob.
Yeah, not just the damage, too. You kind of alluded to this, the cards as well. Like, Easton's having to use cards from his hand to block. Jacob doesn't have to give up any cards there. All those cards are just going to his pitch zone to activate all of his little items and put everything together. So if somehow Easton was able to survive this for the next 10 or 15 turns, he's going to run out of cards.
Yeah, Easton with a really nice answer to Jacob's shenanigans on this turn. It's Hypothermia, of course, cutting off go again from attacks. That means only at most one Techloplasma Pistol attack on this turn, but Jacob's still able to do some of the setup work, able to load up, and does have a Command and Conquer. So a great
well-timed,
yes,
very
a great use of Command and Conquer on this turn. Not able to do the Plasma Pistol setup, but still a high amount of threat headed Easton's way if he wants to preserve that arsenal. Going to have to do some work. Does have the Tunic Crown of Seeds combo available, so can go to a 5-card hand here.
And Jacob looks like he's going to be forcing that as well. Also, I want to point out in his pitch zone, you see that Remembrance in there. Jacob really committed to this plan in the mirror.
Yep, that's the
Super
second
impactful.
time. Second time we've seen that Remembrance pitched. It was pitched early, so now we are on Jacob's second cycle. Honestly, like, the first cycle is pretty similar to the second cycle for Jacob. They're just resource cards for the most part and block 3s. It is nice, though, to be able to go back to that Remembrance, either get your big defense reactions again or some key piece that you may need.
It looks like the Crown of Seeds activation like you're talking about. Get the Arsenal card out of there so you don't have to worry about it. Ram's Head's going to get involved here. It looks like possibly a card from hand. Maybe not from Easton's side. Looks like a Glacial Footsteps here, so one's going to get through. Jacob's like, yeah, you got to give me the resource there actually to pump the shield. Hypothermia is going to go away here.
Here's that hypothermia back. I don't need that anymore.
Here, you can have this back. Thanks for letting me borrow it for a turn. Very nice of Easton to share his things with Jacob.
I agree. Good sportsmanship on display. Really like the affliction mechanic. Love the idea of handing your opponent a problematic thing to deal with.
It's just part of Flesh and Blood. You're there together. You're there to get the game together. So you might as well, help each other out. Here's a little something for you. Here's a little something for you. You get an affliction. You get an affliction. Everyone gets afflictions.
Tannen is at the quoting Oprah stage of his oldness now. Definitely a totally young, cool thing to do when you quote Oprah. Kids love it.
I guarantee you half the people watching this that are Flesh and Blood fans might not even know who Oprah is.
It's a good possibility. Taking a little damage here is Jacob.
I have been proud of myself. I had a lot of the old stuff happen this weekend. The old sayings, stuff that make me point out. I haven't had too many of the baseball ones though. So I've been trying to cut back. I can't do both. Okay,
yeah, shifting your brand towards being old as opposed to being baseball guy.
Yeah.
Again, I think those two things do go together though. Like,
sure,
baseball is certainly an old.
The average viewer
game.
is like 48.
Yep, that makes sense.
Let's be real.
That does make sense. So we're gonna go ahead and pay for that. Frostbite is Jacob, and it looks like we're setting up for another big pistol turn here. Multiple 5 attacks headed the way of Easton Douglas, and now. We're just in lethal territory. For the rest of the game, you are in the grinder, Easton. You have to find a way to present offense while still answering these Teklo plasma pistols. Does have that Thunderquake heaved, ready to go. So isn't going to need a lot of cards to generate offense, but it's just like 8 vanilla damage. Like, does that even matter that much?
We keep talking about this as a reference to the Avengers in the end game. We have all the pieces together for Thanos' glove, for the gauntlet, but the pistol is actually Thanos because it is inevitable.
Yeah.
It just keeps coming.
No, it absolutely does. And, having the inevitability in Flesh and Blood, it's become less important recently because the metagame has been so aggressive. And it's been rare that we play second and third cycle games. But this dash deck, bringing back old school Flesh and Blood, punishing these Oldhams, saying any defense you can play, I can play better.
All right, go again, give into the pistol here.
So interesting because Dash doesn't read as an inherently defensive hero. Nothing about the Mechanologist kit is really all that defensive.
So when I first got into the game, Dash is one of the first heroes that I saw. And I started putting, together. I got a Blitz deck from Dash, and I was boosting a lot. And people were like, "Oh, there's Dash decks, going to be the first event. Are you ready to commentate these? Are going to take a while." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's an aggressive hero."
Just,
like,
no, boost, go again, right? Very simple.
They're not actually doing that. That's not actually what's happening. And that's when, one of my first level up moments. In Flesh and Blood, I was like, oh, wait, these heroes have different gears? This is really cool.
Yeah, turns out they can do multiple things. Just like Jacob can do multiple things, it is time for one of the rare attack actions coming from Jacob. It's Enlightened Strike with Go Again, and that means that's going to be followed up by more pistol action. Has a resource ready to go. I believe that card is in Arsenal as well, so other potential output here from Jacob. And if you're Easton, again, you're just in the grinder right now. Critically, combat chain not broken by this Enlightened Strike, so that Rampart cannot come back out to block again.
Yeah, really good timing here from Jacob. Attack in the middle to keep that chain getting a little bit longer. And yeah, you cannot use Ramparts here to block this one.
Love the use of Teklo Foundry Heart in this deck. You read all that text, all that very powerful text, by the way, very powerful ability. This is just Battle Worn 2 in Jacob's deck. That activated ability is never happening under any circumstances.
Not a single time. So it does look like we're going to get a small block here. Easton getting to a very uncomfortable life total.
Yeah, and I think Easton really just made to be uncomfortable from turn 1 when Jacob started with more life. He ended the turn with more life than he started with, and that is a very disheartening thing to see if you're over on Easton's side. And you look at these life totals now, Easton at 3, Jacob at 16, and you see why Jacob felt so favored into this Oldham matchup. What do you do if you're on Easton's side? Here's an attack for 8, a vanilla attack for 8, and does Jacob care at all? He cares to the extent that he has extra cards in hand right now. That's it. Other than that, he could just soak this damage, and he's going to come back with the same pistols he used on the last turn. It will be just as problematic. Does have that defense reaction, going to commit that to defense.
Yes, this Thunderquake only getting through for 4 right now, and like you're saying, Jacob has extra cards in his hand, right? Anything that's just not a blue, is just a free card for him right
Yeah.
now. All his defensive reactions, free cards for him right now. He needs to make sure that he has at least a blue, maybe a few extra points of resources in his hand for his turn, just so he can keep this threat of the Plasma Purifier attacking.
And he's just loading up all 5 as expected here.
He's moving a little bit quicker here, too. I think he can sense the end.
All 3 of those Plasma Purifiers now activated. Going to go ahead, activate this Techno-Plasma Pistol. Plenty of resources still floating, so this is going to happen 3 times on this turn, and Easton Douglas is going to have to commit a lot to this.
Still has a Crater Fist available, still has that Spring Tunic if he wants to give it up. It only has 1 counter on it. I wonder if we're going to get far enough in the game for it to make another resource. That's always a tight dance, a tight rope to walk. These games, oh no, here comes one of those Oakenolds that we saw.
I was just going to mention the Oakenolds we saw pitched early on, and like I get it from Easton's side, I really do, and I think there's a possibility that like maybe the Oakenolds just didn't line up on the first cycle, and that's why they end up getting pitched, and it had less to do with actually setting up a second cycle. But you see the flaw in the second cycle plan now. You're just under so much pressure when you get to the state of the game. It's impossible for those Oakenolds to have influence, and I think that's why it was so critical for the Oakenolds to hit early. I think Oldham had to come out of the gate, blow up Jacob's hand, and just start a steamroll. That was the only way Easton was ever going to make headway in this matchup, and now he's just under basically pistol lock. I think he has to give so many resources to this every single turn that Jacob can win by fatigue, he can win by damage. It does feel inevitable at this point, Tannen.
Yeah, see Jacob giving him the thumbs up after he even blocks out the last 2 attacks fully.
Yeah.
But he's like, you're down to 2, you have no hand. I'm completely fine with this.
And we know Jacob's deck at this point, almost all blues. There's going to be plenty to load up these pistols. We're doing the exact same thing again, 5-5-5. What can you do about it, Easton?
Sounds like a Subway commercial or something.
I don't know if I should make fun of you for liking Subway or being old
I actually
in this
don't like
case.
Subway.
Okay.
Right.
So you're off the hook.
All right.
Good, you saved yourself.
Out of all the options of that kind of food, it's like probably the worst.
I don't know, man. I'll have a veggie sub every now and then. It's tough for us vegetarians. You know, we gotta take our spots where we can when it comes to fast food.
Honestly, I just don't eat that much fast food.
Good for you. Healthy tanning gray. So that's good. You're getting up there in age. You got to watch your cholesterol.
You're 100% right. That's exactly what happens. I've been getting back in the gym lately.
Good.
Watch a lot of FAB videos while I'm on the treadmill.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Here come those pistols again, leaking damage on that first attack, as you would kind of expect, and you see the frustration mounting for Easton. Just going to go ahead and deploy that Ram's Head again, make another block 3, hopefully, and then has to do it another time. There's that second Oakenold we saw pitch. Those are not an option anymore, and the writing is on the wall here, folks. Jacob Baugh kind of going through the motions. I don't see a way out for Easton Douglas. We're still a few reds left in the deck for Jacob, so almost missed what he needed to do on that turn, but did ultimately have the amount of resources needed.
And there's the Crater Fist finally coming out as well. It's going to leave Easton with a card in hand, a card in arsenal, and that resource from the Tunic. So maybe, there we go, let's say, maybe something.
Okay. This is nice for Easton.
There's a glimmer here.
This is as good as you could hope for at this stage in the game, and this will be very annoying for Jacob Baugh. This is a very hard effect to play through. Last time this happened, Jacob just had an attack action, which was nice. This time, not so lucky. Just going to pay full price on this load up, gain a little life from that heart. Does manage to do a little setup, but this time, Easton making it through with a grip, with some options on this turn. Should he be able to go ahead and pitch again? Maybe keep this Channel Lake Frigid around for another turn. Maybe we start turning the corner. Yeah. You never say it's over till it's over in Flesh and Blood, and maybe I spoke a little bit too soon. Caster's Curse. Can Easton find a window to go ahead and present some threat to Jacob Baugh? It's a shame that Channel Lake Frigid just couldn't line up a little bit better. If this turn was an Oakenold turn, you could really see things change for Easton Douglas here.
No 2 ice cards here, but he does have a big attack. This is a Glacial Footsteps that's going to be dominated.
Yeah, and I think the problem here is that there's just a good defense reaction lined up for Jacob Baugh in Arsenal, and he doesn't even have to use it if he doesn't want to, because, again, very vanilla damage just coming through. You do see Jacob grabbing those boots, going to go ahead, activate those. I'm expecting maybe an unmovable from Arsenal as well. Let's see what the defense is here from Jacob.
So we might get a block from hand. Looks like a Sift possibly coming out, and then got to believe that Arsenal that's been sitting there for a while is going to get involved here too.
That would be my expectation. Let's see.
Pump the boots.
2 more floating.
And an Oasis.
Oasis respite.
Going to stop another 4, so I think this is, what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stopped here.
Yeah, 1 point of damage. Going to leak through.
All of that for a drop of blood.
Yeah, and now this Channel Lake Frigid goes away. Jacob's stuff is mostly loaded. Going to put 2 counters on those induction chambers.
And I don't know if
the pistol a few times.
I don't know if Easton's going to be able to make it out of this turn.
I don't know
we'll
either, Tannen. I don't know.
There's been a leak on the first pistol every time.
Yep, and now if it demands 2 cards, I
the
don't
third
know
one will probably get through at that point, yeah. We'll have to see, because resources are needed here from Easton as well as the problem.
Yeah, has to have a blue to pitch to that Rampart.
He does have a Tunic counter here, so maybe can find his way through one more turn.
Okay. Yeah,
but then what there? You're going to have to give up all your entire hand.
Yeah, may have to also block with a Tunic at some point. So, as we said, the deck heavily stacked against Easton Douglas. Looking for a way out, some way to play through this grinder of a situation that Jacob Baugh has put him in. It's funny, you watch this match and you say to yourself, well, why doesn't everyone just play Dash? This seems like a very, very powerful strategy.
And I think that the exact reason why is something we're going to get to see. Like, assuming Jacob makes it through this round, wait till his next matchup happens, and then you're going to see why.
Things get a lot harder.
Yeah,
when
you won't see it every round. Yeah.
Yeah, and blocks are lined up there. It's Rampart, Crown, and a card from hand on the first attack. Here's the second one, block 3 plus Rampart getting +2. Here's the third one. Now we're going to see Rampart committed another time, either at +2 with a 3 block or more resources put into it, possibly from that Tunic, depending on the texture of Easton's hand.
Yeah, don't forget, he doesn't have to pay 1 to block. He can block here for free. It
Correct.
just has 2 values. So if he only wants to give up 1 card to his hand, he can do that. But if he needs to make it the third one, he does have that Tunic available, so he won't have to give up both cards. But let's see. So here we go. Here comes the Tunic block along with all this.
Yeah, so looking to make a 2-card hand here, and you can understand why if you're Easton Douglas. Again, you have to do something to challenge Jacob. If you do not, he will continue to do this turn after turn.
And he used the Tunic trigger counter there to be able to pump the Ramparts up to make it a full block.
Hypothermia should slow down Jacob quite a bit here, only able to attack once with a pistol. And an arsenal for Easton as well. So if the threat is low on this turn, maybe Easton can clap back with something big.
You see Jacob doing all the math here.
Yeah, still going to be able to do his setup stuff. Going to go ahead and cast Whisper. I doubt that has happened all that often. Just going to do a little opting.
It's probably for this exact situation. He's like, when I have extra blues or just don't need to do it. This is just a good blue block 3.
Yeah.
Generic in Jacob's deck that sometimes has text.
Absolutely. And as expected, going to go ahead and spend some resources loading up those pistols, those induction chambers, those plasma purifiers. Has the full loadout now. Goes ahead, activates all 3 plasma purifiers. Pitches again, loads them back up, and now it is time for pistol. I do want to note, Jacob's going to move into the next turn with no arsenal. So the defensive option's a little bit more limited than we're used to seeing Jacob with, and only attacking for 5 here means that Crown of Seeds alongside Rampart plus a block could give Easton a pretty decent hand to come back with.
Yeah, Easton navigating this really well these last couple turns.
Giving himself a chance. I got to say, like, for all that he has his back against the wall, he has played this absolutely desperate situation extremely well, begging for one more chance to challenge Jacob's life total.
This is what champions are made of, right? So, like, how well can you play with your back against the wall?
Yep.
When it's easy to play well when everything's going right. Let's see how well you play when you're the one with everything going wrong.
Never giving up. Driving, competing, finding a way to try and scrap together these last few points of damage.
What can Easton cobble together here? I think I see a Glacial possibly in his hand. I don't know if he's going to be able to play that and fuse it.
Yeah, and that's really what's needed now. It's too easy for Jacob to just give up most of his hand. If he makes it through with any cards, he's coming back for 15.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. You have to get something traded here. And it looks like it's just going to be a hammer.
Yeah.
It's a frosty hammer at that, but
yeah, I just don't think that's going to offer enough threat on this turn. It had to do more, and You know, Jacob thinking, what's the worst case scenario here? Maybe Pummel comes, this Whisper, probably just an extra card in hand, and yeah, willing to commit that to defense. A little bit more safety for the life total. 1 damage is going to leak through.
Frostbite given over to Jacob as well.
Yeah,
So he's gonna go down to 10.
Jacob's deck is all blues. He needs basically 3 resources to operate on his turn. He's totally fine with this.
Arsenal here for Easton is going to draw back up to that full 4-card hand. So he's got 5 technically here.
And we're going to see 15 presented again, and this time there's no equipment. We expect that there should be a second card committed here. We can use the Crown of Seeds, so there are some other options, and maybe this is the last time you can get away with only having to use 1 card on defense on this first Technoplasma Pistol attack.
That was a mouthful, Brian.
Yeah, I know. A lot of words there.
That was impressive.
I try. They pay me to talk. Did you know that?
You get paid?
Oh, I haven't been. I assume at some point someone's going to pay me for all this work. Maybe not. Maybe I've been doing this wrong. You know what? I'm having a good time. I don't care.
Hanging out with the boys, talking chocolate chips, you know.
Yeah, that's totally fine. And here's that second block. Now for the third block, going to take another card. It looks like we'll get an Arsenal again, Will Easton. But we're eating up those cards now, and we're going to find ourselves in the exact same position on the next turn.
Yeah, decks are getting quite small for both players here.
We're out of hypothermias thus far. That has been the best way for Easton to slow Jacob down, because you just go ahead and deploy that 0-cost thing. It's a nice 1-card hand that really takes away Jacob's options. I just don't know that we're going to have it all that many more times.
Is Easton considering attacking here? Looks like he's going to with a Frosty Hammer.
Yeah, and where does that leave him on the next defensive turn?
I mean, this means that you can't activate Crown of Seeds, and that's been very huge. But at least he's trying to do something, because that's been the problem, right, is he hasn't have anything going. But Jacob could just shrug this off.
Yeah, and I think the problem now is that he's just in a hard lock, right? Every single turn should proceed in exactly the same manner, unless there's something that breaks him out of it, or if Jacob just bricks. But it's not really possible anymore. There's nothing left in the deck at this point. It's going to be blues.
Yeah, he's pitch stacked very well. He talks about at this point in time, when he gets to his deck, his deck only has like generally 1, 2, or 3 reds left over, and they're all defensive reactions.
Yeah, they may be clumped. I do remember seeing a couple of reds together, but does have 3 blues here, 2 floating. Going to go ahead and get exactly what he needs out of this turn.
And that's the part that makes sense here, too. It's like, yeah, you can maybe hope for a hand where he gets clumped with a bunch of reds, but you're not getting through that hand because it's going to be the defensive reactions.
Correct. And now this is going to demand 2 cards plus resources from the Rampart as we go through the rest of the turn. Yeah, there's just no way for Easton to get out of it, and that is going to get the handshake, and Jacob Baugh advances to our semifinal.